John Wayne stood backstage at Grauman's Chinese Theater, adjusting his tie for the fifth time. The premiere of Sands of Iwo Jima was about to begin, and his stomach felt like it was full of stones. He could hear the crowd outside. Thousands of people had lined Hollywood Boulevard to...
They screamed his name like he was some kind of hero. The irony wasn't lost on him. His publicist rushed over, clipboard in hand. "John, they're ready for you in 2 minutes. The newsreel cameras are set up. Remember to wave to the crowd, then stop at the microphone for a few words." Wayne nodded but didn't speak. He looked down at his hands. These were the hands that had held rifles in dozens of war movies. These were the hands that had led fictional soldiers into battle while real men died on actual beaches. "You okay?" his publicist asked. "Fine," Wayne lied. The truth was, he hadn't been fine since filming ended. Director Alan Dwan had brought in actual Marines as technical advisors. They taught him how to hold a weapon properly, how to move under fire, how a real sergeant would bark orders. Every day on set, Wayne had felt like a fraud. One of the advisors, a colonel who'd lost an arm at Tarawa, had pulled him aside during filming. "You're doing important work here," the colonel had said. "These movies matter. They help people understand what we went through." Wayne had wanted to believe him, but standing here now, about to walk out and accept praise for playing a hero while he'd never fired a shot in anger, the guilt pressed down on him like a physical weight. He tried to enlist. After Pearl Harbor, he'd gone to the recruitment office 3 times. But Republic Pictures had his contract locked tight, and the studio heads had connections in Washington. They'd argued that Wayne was more valuable making movies that boosted morale than he would be as another soldier. The draft board had agreed. Essential war work, they'd called it. Wayne called it something else entirely. The stage manager gave him the signal. Wayne took a deep breath and walked toward the curtain. The moment he stepped outside, the noise hit him like a wave. Flash bulbs exploded. People screamed. Somewhere a band was playing patriotic music. The searchlights cut through the night sky in those same patterns they'd used during the war to spot enemy planes. Wayne waved automatically, his movie star smile fixed in place. But his eyes scanned the crowd differently than usual. He was looking for them, the ones he always looked for, the veterans. They were easy to spot. They stood differently than the civilians. Straighter, quieter. Some wore their uniforms even though the war had been over for 4 years. Others wore their service on their faces, the distant look in their eyes, the way they stood slightly apart from the celebrating crowd. Wayne's smile faltered for just a second when he spotted a young man in a wheelchair, his left leg missing below the knee. The man wasn't smiling. He just watched Wayne with an expression that was hard to read. The publicist guided him to the microphone. "John, say a few words about the film." Wayne gripped the microphone stand. His prepared speech evaporated from his mind. "This movie," he started, his voice rougher than intended, "is dedicated to the real Marines. The ones who fought at Iwo Jima. The ones who didn't come home." The crowd applauded, but Wayne barely heard it. He was still looking at the veterans scattered through the audience. Were they judging him? Did they see through the costume and makeup to the man who'd stayed safe in Barigold? "Let's go inside," his publicist whispered, touching his elbow. Wayne nodded and turned toward the theater entrance. That's when he saw him. The man stood just outside the rope line, separate from the crowd pushing forward. He wore a simple suit that had seen better days, but his posture was unmistakably military. He was probably in his mid-20s with dark hair and a weathered face that made him look older. What stopped Wayne cold were the man's eyes. They were locked on him with an intensity that cut through all the noise and chaos of the premiere. The man wasn't smiling. He wasn't cheering. He just stood there, watching. Wayne's publicist was still talking, trying to move him along, but Wayne pulled away. Something drew him toward this stranger. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something else entirely. He walked over to the rope line, ignoring the surge of fans trying to get closer. Security guards moved to intercept him, but Wayne waved them off. "Evening," Wayne said when he reached the man. Up close, he could see more details. The man's suit jacket didn't quite hide the fact that his right hand was scarred badly. Burns, Wayne thought. The kind you got from fire or explosions. "Mr. Wayne," the man said. His voice was quiet but steady. "You served?" Wayne asked, though he already aired the answer. 5th Marine Division, the man replied. Iwo Jima. Wayne felt his chest tighten. Of course. Of all the veterans who might show up tonight, of course it would be someone who'd actually been there. What's your name, son? David Miller, sir. Don't call me sir, Wayne said automatically. I didn't earn it. Something flickered across Miller's face. Not quite a smile, not quite agreement, just acknowledgement. The crowd was getting louder, pressing closer. Photographers had noticed Wayne talking to someone and were trying to get shots. His publicist was making frantic gestures from the theater entrance. Would you like to come inside? Wayne heard himself ask. Watch the movie as my guest? Miller hesitated. For a moment, Wayne thought he'd refused. All right, Miller finally said. Wayne pulled strings to get Miller seated in the VIP section, just a few rows behind where Wayne himself would sit. The publicist was furious about the disruption to the seating chart, but Wayne didn't care. The lights dimmed. The curtain rose. The movie. Wayne had seen the film dozens of times during editing. He knew every frame, every line of dialogue, but watching it now with Miller somewhere behind him in the darkness felt completely different. The movie opened with training sequences. Wayne's character, Sergeant Stryker, put his men through brutal drills. On screen, Wayne barked orders and pushed the young Marines to their limits. Wayne couldn't help wondering what Miller thought. Did the training look realistic? Could Miller tell these were just actors playing at being Marines? The story moved forward. Character development. Tension between Stryker and some of his men. Wayne had been proud of these scenes when they filmed them. Now they felt hollow. Then came the battle sequences. The film's recreation of Iwo Jima filled the screen. Explosions, gunfire, Marines falling. Wayne's character led his men through hellfire, taking the fight to the Japanese defenders. Wayne kept his eyes on the screen, but his attention was behind him. He strained to hear any reaction from Miller. Was he shifting in his seat, getting up to leave? Wayne wouldn't have blamed him. The movie theater was silent, except for the sounds from the screen. Even the usual popcorn rustling had stopped. The audience was transfixed. On screen, Marines raised the flag on Mount Suribachi, the iconic moment that Joe Rosenthal had captured in his famous photograph. The moment that had become a symbol of American determination. Wayne's character didn't live to see it. Sergeant Stryker died in the film's final act, shot by a Japanese sniper just after the battle seemed won. It was a hero's death, dramatic and meaningful. Wayne remembered filming that scene. He'd lain on the fake beach, covered in fake blood, while the director called out instructions. It had felt important at the time. Powerful. Now, sitting in this theater with an actual Iwo Jima veteran behind him, it felt like something else. The movie ended. The lights came up. The audience erupted in applause. Wayne stood slowly, turning to face the crowd. People were on their feet, clapping and cheering. Some were crying. He looked for Miller, found him still seated, 3 rows back. The Marine was staring straight ahead, his scarred hands resting on the armrests. His face was unreadable. The lobby filled with people wanting to congratulate Wayne. Studio executives, critics, other actors. Everyone wanted a moment with him. Everyone wanted to tell him how powerful the film was, how important, how real. Wayne went through the motions, shook hands, accepted praise he didn't feel he deserved, all while keeping one eye out for Miller. He spotted the Marine near the exit, standing alone while the crowd swirled around him. Wayne excused himself from a conversation with a Paramount executive and made his way over. What did you think? Wayne asked. Miller looked at him for a long moment before answering. It was a movie, he finally said. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I've got. Wayne felt frustration rising. Look, I know it wasn't perfect. I know we probably got things wrong. But we tried. We had advisors, Marines who were there. We tried to honor what you boys did. Miller's jaw tightened slightly. You want to know what it was really like? Yes. No, you don't. The bluntness of it stung. Wayne was about to respond when Miller continued. The beach was smaller than in your movie. More crowded. Bodies everywhere. And I mean everywhere. The sand wasn't just black. It was black and red, and parts of people you couldn't identify anymore. The noise wasn't like in the film. It was worse. Constant. Your ears bled from it. Your brain couldn't process it. Miller's voice hadn't risen, but people nearby had stopped talking. They were listening. The smell, Miller went on. You can't put smell in a movie. Burned flesh. Sulfur from the volcanic sand, gasoline, death. It stuck in your throat. You could taste it for weeks after. Wayne felt like he'd been punched in the gut. My squad, Miller said quietly. 9 men when we hit the beach. 3 of us walked off that island. 3 out of 9. And they weren't clean deaths like in your film. They weren't heroes dying with meaningful last words. They were kids screaming for their mothers while their guts spilled out. The lobby had gone completely quiet. Even the studio executives had stopped talking. So what did I think of your movie? Miller asked. I think it was clean. I think it was neat. I think you gave Sergeant Stryker a purpose to his death. Real Marines didn't get that. They just died. Wayne felt his face burning. Every fear he'd had about being a fraud came crashing down on him. Here it was. The truth from someone who'd actually been there. Wayne stood frozen, unsure what to say. An apology felt inadequate. A defense felt insulting. Miller started to turn away, then stopped. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something small. A photograph, bent and faded. This is my squad, Miller said, holding it out. Taken the day before we shipped out. Wayne took the photo carefully. 9 young men in uniform, grinning at the camera with the confidence of youth. They looked like boys playing dress-up. That's Thompson. Miller pointed to a kid who couldn't have been more than 18. Died on the 2nd day. Mortar round. We couldn't find enough of him to bury. That's Rodriguez next to him. Made it to the 3rd day before a sniper got him. Patterson there, he lasted until the 4th day. Stepped on a mine. Miller went through the entire photo. 9 names. 6 deaths. Each one described in brief. Clinical detail that somehow made it worse than if he'd been emotional about it. You know why I came here tonight? Miller asked, taking the photo back. Wayne shook his head. Because Rodriguez loved John Wayne movies. Used to talk about them all the time, said when he got back home. He was going to save up and see every single one. Talked about it right up until the sniper round hit him. Miller carefully returned the photo to his pocket. Thompson wrote letters to his girl back home. Told her he was going to be a hero like John Wayne. He believed it would be glorious. I'm sorry, Wayne managed to say. Don't be sorry, Miller said. You didn't kill them. The war killed them. Then why tell me this? Miller was quiet for a moment. Because you asked what I thought. You asked if the movie was real. Wayne waited. The movie wasn't real, Miller continued. But it doesn't have to be. Rodriguez and Thompson and all the others, they believed in something. They believed in heroes and honor and fighting for what's right. Your movies gave them that, gave them something to hold on to when everything else was falling apart. But it was a lie, Wayne said. I made them think war was something noble when really it was just, they knew, Miller interrupted. Once they hit that beach, they knew. But before that, they needed to believe. And after, the ones of us who came back, we needed people to remember, to care. Your movie tonight, maybe it's not real, but it makes people remember that Iwo Jima happened. That 27,000 Marines went onto that island and 7,000 didn't come back. Wayne didn't trust himself to speak. I'm not going to lie to you and say the movie captured what it was really like, Miller said. Nothing could. But Rodriguez would have loved it. He would have sat in this theater and cared for Sergeant Stryker because that's who he wanted to be. That's who he tried to be. Miller held out his scarred right hand. Wayne shook it, feeling the rough texture of old burned tissue. Then Miller did something Wayne didn't expect. The Marine stepped back and brought his hand up in a crisp military salute. Wayne froze. I didn't serve. I don't deserve that. This isn't for you, Miller said, holding the salute. This is for Rodriguez and Thompson and Patterson and all the others who won't get to see another John Wayne movie. They believed in what represented. This is for them. Wayne felt something break inside him. Tears stung his eyes. Slowly, uncertain if he had any right to, he returned the salute. They held it for 3 seconds. 4. Then Miller dropped his hand, nodded once, and walked out of the theater. Wayne stood there, his hand still raised, while everyone in the lobby watched in complete silence. Wayne lowered his hand slowly. The lobby was still quiet. People were staring at him like they'd just witnessed something profound. His publicist rushed over. John, that was incredible. Did you plan that? The photographers got it. This is going to be front-page news tomorrow. Wayne barely heard her. He was still watching the door where Miller had disappeared. Get me a pen and paper, Wayne said quietly. What? Now. Someone handed him a notebook. Wayne wrote down Miller's name and everything he could remember about the men in that photograph. 9 names, 9 stories that would never be told unless someone remembered them. Over the next several weeks, Wayne did something he'd never done before. He tracked down Miller's address and wrote him a letter. Then he wrote to the families of the other men Miller had mentioned. He told them their sons and brothers and husbands were remembered, that their sacrifice mattered. Most wrote back, some didn't. The ones who responded told him stories about the boys who'd gone to war. Not the heroes from movies, but real kids who liked baseball and music and had dreams about coming home. Wayne kept every letter, started a collection that would grow over the years as he researched more names, more stories. He visited VA hospitals, not for publicity, but because he needed to. He listened to veterans tell stories that would never make it into his movies. His next war film, he insisted on different things. More technical advisors, more realism about the cost of combat. He still played heroes, but he tried to make them more human, more flawed, more real. He never forgot that salute. Never forgot what Miller had told him about representation versus reality. Wayne understood now that his job wasn't to show war as it really was. That was impossible. His job was to honor the men who fought while acknowledging the weight they carried. Years later, Wayne would win an Oscar for True Grit. In his acceptance speech, he thanked the usual people, directors, co-stars, his family, but he ended with something different. And to the real heroes, he said, the ones who served when I couldn't. Everything I do is because you believed in something bigger than yourselves. I hope I've earned the right to tell your stories. The camera didn't catch it, but Wayne's hand moved in a small gesture. Almost a salute, almost a prayer. He never saw David Miller again. Tried to find him a few times over the years, but lost the trail. Wayne hoped the Marine had found peace, though he suspected that was too much to ask. Men who'd seen what Miller had seen didn't find peace. They just found ways to keep going. But that night at the premiere, Miller had given Wayne something important. He'd given him permission to feel worthy of the roles he played. Not because Wayne had earned it through service, but because the representation mattered to those who had served. The salute hadn't been for Wayne the man. It had been for the symbol, for the idea that heroes existed somewhere. Even if reality was messier and darker than the movies showed, Wayne carried that understanding with him for the rest of his life. Every time he put on a uniform for a film, he thought about Miller and Rodriguez and Thompson and all the others. He tried to honor them not by pretending he knew what they'd experienced, but by keeping their memory alive in whatever small way he could. That's what changed everything. Not the premiere, not the movie, not even the conversation, the salute. That single gesture from a scarred Marine who'd seen hell and come back changed how John Wayne understood his place in the world. He wasn't a hero, he was a storyteller. And sometimes, especially for those who'd lost people they loved, the story was more important than absolute truth. Miller had taught him that. Rodriguez and Thompson and 6 other dead Marines had taught him that, and Wayne spent the rest of his career trying to be worthy of that lesson.